This one will be focused more on detailed, specific areas, individual questions, and at first, we start with the basics, with the question of housing and accommodation. Yes, so this will be presented by Uta Philip from the University of Debrecen. The Hungarian point of view, but based on our common research. Over to you. And once again, about 15 up to 20 minutes.
I'm from the University of Debrecen from Hungary, and I will talk about the experience with housing in the second countries. And the key point of the presentation is connected with the structure of the chapter what it is housing. And first of all, I will talk about the elements of the research, the background information in housing, but we heard about that in the first few minutes, so I will be short with that. And after I will talk about the types of the accommodation what we can offer in these countries. And the main focus, I guess, is going to be in the permanent settlement and integration, and the keys of the integration, and this is connected to the fundings. And in the end, I want to show some good practices for the countries got in the past few years. So how we just heard about that, the relevance of the research is the migration that is happening in the past few years. And over 8 million refugees were on the move. And assistance in the housing is indeed in this situation because that's the basic of everything. I need to find a good job, go to school, and live a new life or find out the situation. And experience just showed to us that the role of the B4 countries was just so important in the past few years and right now as well. And both in the short and in the long term as well, and after the integration as well. And some background about the countries. The common point in the housing lack is a problem, like more in the poor countries. The cause of the problem is like the low level of the rental housing, and it's connected to the quality and the affordability as well. Significant of the proportion of dwellings are privately owned. For example, in Hungary and in Slovakia, it's really very high. In Hungary, it's like 91%, and in Slovakia, it's 92%. And in the best situation is in the Czech Republic, it's 78%, and in Poland it's 86%. And in the past few years, the situation is getting a bit worse because of the inflation, the private rental market just went super high. It causes problems for the natives as well. So, for example, in Hungary, it's super hard to afford a house or rent. And in the other hand, the problem is that the social housing sector has not established Therefore, signs of the housing crisis can be identified, and the refugees not support the very best situation, social housing stuff. And in the previous infrastructure, during the Syrian refugee crisis, there were exceptional points, but in a negligible number. So, for example, in Hungary right now, there is only school, and it's not enough in that way. Okay, so the next slide is about the crisis care and the short-term accommodation. How we mentioned that before, that was the must-have in Hungary. And we just concentrate to the 2 or 3 days period. For example, in Hungary, yes, it was like 29% of the refugees who chose the country for short time, and the main reason was like the influence of family or friends, so they have relatives or friends who were in Hungary before. And temporary shelters was just so crucial in this moment to managing the situation, collaboration between the municipalities and the NGOs. And without good infrastructure, what we don't have in this moment, it gave place like in unused buildings or public facilities. And mainly in Hungary, the NGOs role was super important in this period because, but in other countries as well, but in Hungary it was really the main focus because they were organizing meals and doing like a basic social work as well. For example, looking after children as well because the main characteristic of the people who arrived to Hungary was really children, so it was super important in this moment. And the next one is the temporary one, which is less than 6 months. So most of arrivals tend to stay only short term, but there were exceptions. In Hungary, the main reason was like the bureaucracy, so they're missing documents, or they need to have like find out what is the next step to move on. And the demand of the temporary accommodation is just increased in this moment. And in the other hand, it's important to mention that like the first 6 months is crucial, like life to find out like they want to be staying or just build a future. So, they really need the bill start in this period. And in the light of the accommodation, there is like 4 types, which is stabilized. One was like, as I mentioned before, the private network, which is like family or friend. The another one, the private housing market, what I mentioned before is like very expensive, so this is not the best one. The next one is the subsidized housing market, and after the extended stay, the community shelters. And in this period, the NGOs and the volunteers who always like really informing them like which is the best way that they can use in the future to find the best accommodation that they can sell. And the targeted housing, just the numbers that I mentioned before. I think I don't want to bring all of them. For example, the staying community shelters, that was the highest in Hungary. It was less than 70%. And I mentioned before that we just got like street place where they can go, the people can go, so they just find some new places and open places as well. And the private housing market, the widest coverage was in Poland. It was like 38%. And usually like it's connected to the financial reasons. So here the people really get a very good support, very good so that's why the lowest number was in Slovakia. But the reason here it was because they got help, lots of informational help, and the locals travel to the refugees. So that's why they don't need to go to the private housing market and pay a lot of money. But important to mention that the private networks for longer stay just get exhausted because learning, read, and duration influence super system are fatigued because and it became more institutionalized. Yeah, and as part of development, settlement, and integration. This is but not really happening in Hungary, so now I'm talking to other countries. The long-term housing solution have complex programs, and they provide not only the housing, but also it's a very stable location of the refugees. And the type that we can talk about that, it's a bit connected to the last size what I mentioned. So the market rental housing, this is what I rent like. This is what I talk about, like the rents are super high here, so it's not so good. The collective centers, these are the dormitory style facilities, and these provide medium and long-term housing, and these are mostly run by the public institutions, and that's a must in Hungary. Staying with relatives and friends, that was the most common in the first period, but after the volunteers and relatives resource are exhausted.
the municipal subsidized hotels, it's a bit connected to the collective centers, but the situation is much more better here. The level of the accommodation is much more comfortable. And yeah, and for refugees, the market rental housing is difficult to offer due to high rents and rising living costs, and that's why the public and the NGO supported housing is increasing, is very, very important in this period. Yeah. Now, the financial support is the key to providing the housing in the countries. And it can came from the international organization and the NGOs as well, and house governments and their authorities. All of the countries get their good practices, but now I just bring two. The first one, the Czech Republic, which is the good practice, which is the best good practice, if I can say that. And another one, the Hungarian one, which is not a good practice. This is more than like example, like what is happened if the program is underfunded. So at the Czech Republic, the Solidarity Allowance, that's the name of the program, support the private landlords with a high amount of money. And this is expert long-term housing opportunities for refugees and encourage the employment for private landlords. And in Hungary, the housing options are limited, mainly available on the private rental market. And there is no adequate subsidized share or compensation for private landlords. So it's more than like market oriented. And refugees recycling state subsidized, which is very low. And yes,
That could be a big number because they have to machine stuff.
I'm sorry. Thank you. I smell myself very loud, so okay. Okay, maybe the next slide will be good, but actually this is the last one, so if I talk, it is good or a bit louder.
Yeah, that's
Okay. Thank you. So, yeah, the good practices and in addition, the financial support and other services are needed to ensure housing. And the services include like providing information on available subsidies for housing options, organizing contacts and communication between actors, providing employment. It's like basic things like furniture or mattresses to improve the quality of the housing because it's important as well. And which is the main key point as well, the transport, so organizing transport to just the accommodation. And yeah, there are examples in other countries. For example, yeah, I forgot to say something like in the Poland, they've got a very good practice as well. It's called like housing hotline project. And the project provides data information to Ukrainian refugees to seeking accommodation in Poland. And it was absolutely made by, the database was made by a non-profit organization as well. And that's why Poland offers free accommodation to Ukrainian people to guide them to find the perfect place to be in. And yeah, it was like working every day, so, and it's very important as well. And refugees welcome project was in the Czech Republic, and here the refugees got adequate accommodation in private homes, and it's given a perfect chance to integrate because they live together with the local people, and it's a very good practice as well. And the accommodation, yeah, in the end of the chapter, they just wrote a lot. This is just three, and I think it's very important. For example, to increase in state and local support, to measure housing security for refugees, and it is essential to increase state or local government support. Yeah, it's very important because because the actual situation is just so hard if they don't get enough help. Development of integration programs. This is they are very important in the longer stay for the successful integration of refugees. It's very necessary to develop the targeted programs that take into to the specific needs and challenges in different groups. For example, in Hungary, the Roma family situation is very important in that way. And the efficient allocation of resources, it is important to allocate resources more efficiently and involve new sources to ensure the basic needs of the refugees and mostly in the long term. Yeah, and that was it. Thank you so much.
It's interesting that you should mention because we're talking here about the Ukrainian refugees whose situation is dire and dramatic. But we have to bear in mind that there are also minority groups within this community, like the Ukrainian Roma. Like people with disabilities who have special challenges, and that has to be tackled, that has to be addressed, and that's also something that was missing in those first texts. Thank you very much. And Rosa also mentioned the question of integration, of organizing the accommodation and housing so that the two communities, the host community and the refugees, can interact and blend, and now we will further address the problem of integration as we will listen to a presentation by Judith Choba about labor markets, so about how the refugees can find work, and yes, here we are, which is also a necessary point to fully function. So, over to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation. It was a challenging year for us working together with you. And the truly was enjoyable time having a large scale of information related to the Visegrad countries. And especially, it's my pleasure to give some points related to employment situation of displaced person in the Visegrad countries. As you know, the employment policy is always in the focus of European countries because this is the main condition of economic development. And in the last years, because the labor shortage, it was really a big challenge. How can we fill this labor shortage and lead the support of Ukrainian displaced person? The Visegrad countries got the opportunity to fulfill this need, and I was curious with our team if we can use this opportunity and can we keep the refugees and displaced persons from Ukraine, or we have or we faced such a number of obstacles which blocked this process, and we have to find really good practices to overcome these difficulties to be able to keep this person in on the labor market of the host countries. So I try to focus on these next 4 points. Although I have a lot of things to say, so I ask my person to do my presentation. First of all, I wanted to say a few words about the labor market situation, because we have heard during the previous presentation that it's not the first period when the Ukrainian workers are working in foreign countries, especially in European, on the labor market of European countries. And I think so it's also interesting to know some information related to the legal framework of working abroad, because during the economic crisis, this was really restricted legislation background. And it's interesting how it has changed in the last years. The legislation conditions working abroad for a displaced person. And in the third point, I tried to describe a bit the characteristic of the work and the employment situation of the displaced person on the labor market of the Visegrad countries, and last but not least, some information related to the good work practices faced in Visegrad countries in the last two years. So let us start with the present labor market situation. Maybe it's important to know that this economic migration process started after the declaration of the independence of Ukraine in 1991, and after that time we realized that more and more people who belong to minority groups, doesn't matter if this minority is Hungarian minority, Polish minority, or Gypsy minority, or Russian minority. So this group of minorities started to go to the mainland, and at the beginning they start work, and after that this migration became long-term migration, and they find a new home in that countries. And similar that project, since the beginning of the 90s, we realized another phenomenon in frame of labor market question. It was the seasonal labor market migration. And this seasonal labor market migration had a tradition which goes back to the Soviet era. A lot of Ukrainian person during that time worked in summertime in agriculture and construction sector in Russia. And this tradition that they have to then during the summer earn a bit additional money was large later on when the travel condition was easier after the declaration of independence of Ukraine, and the target countries has changed also because it was no more the Russia as the target country of the seasonal migration, labor migration, then the Western European countries, and it's also was mentioned more and more amount of the labor migrants turned to the neighboring countries, especially to Poland, before the war. So the common culture and the good salaries was really motivated for the person try out this seasonal work. Although we have to mention that the working condition was not so easy because the restriction of work permission was really strict, and it was not allowed freely traveling to other countries and having jobs. So developed a really large scale of informal economy and scheduled economy based on the labor migrants. This here was research by the Statistical Office of Ukraine, and the chart, what I put it into the slide, was prepared and published in the year 2017, and I think so it shows clearly which high amount of workers traveled abroad during this first period before the period working abroad. So you can realize that between 7 and 9 million persons worked before the war abroad. And it's interesting to know how many persons from these 7 and 9 million find a job in the Visegrad countries. The gold number is difficult to say because we have different statistical structure in different countries. And as I mentioned, the shadow economy and the informal economy is quite developed, so it's not easy to compare the dates, the official date and unofficial date. So that's why we have just estimation in different studies, and then try to sum up these estimations and show you some numbers. And according to the numbers, before the war in Poland, were the 1,350,000 workers, together with the official and unofficial economy. The Czech Republic has 150,000 workers, Slovakia 15,000 workers, and Hungary between 30 and 50,000 workers. It's important to know that the workers who are working in Hungary belongs mostly to the Hungarian minority because they have a common language and they have opportunity working free in Hungary based on double citizenship, which was created by the Hungarian government at the beginning of 2010. So it's not a new phenomenon working abroad, as I mentioned, but which condition had the workers who are arriving from Ukraine started to work in neighboring countries? It was finally totally different. As I mentioned at the beginning of 2000, it was not so easy to find a job on the labor market, and just between 2008 and 2017, overviewed the labor market opportunities in these countries because they can apply for work with the work permit, and it was not easy to achieve this work permit, but several jobs and several regions offer specific amount of work permits and support the traveling to that region and to have the job, but other region was much closer, and in that region developed further the shadow economy and informal economy. You can imagine how many women are working, for example, in the care sector in Germany, in informal economy, and we have the same situation in Hungary and the neighboring country in agriculture seasons too, and the retail sectors and the construction sectors too. So the work permission is just the top of this number and of this process. Opening the border for the workers from Ukraine happened in 2017 when the European Union accepted the visa liberalization regulation because this regulation offered a person who wanted to work in foreign countries traveling in Europe without any visa for 90 days, although the 90 days was limited in 180 time period, so it was not allowed coming in and going out and let's stepping next turn. So it's and kind of limitation, but it doesn't disturb the shadow economy. 90 days was allowed working legal, and after the further days in the shadow economy. So we have less and less obstacles for person who wanted to, for workers who wanted to work in a neighboring country or in the countries on the labor market of the European Union. And after the outbreak of the work, the border was open for the person who already worked in the neighboring country, in the Visegrad country too, and also for displaced persons. So it was no further restriction having a job in the host countries, and starting to establish a new life in these Visegrad countries. The problem was that although the European Union gave the opportunity for the government to support the person finding a job on the labor market of Visegrad countries, the different countries, they rated totally differently their labor permission, and we had that kind of experience is that this form of regulation has a big impact on the labor market situation of the workers in the Visegrad country. I put into this slide some information related to the specific regulation in each country. So I wouldn't tell all the details, just some minor points I wish to highlight. First of all, Poland offers the larger scale for the workers who wanted to have a job under labor market of Poland, because they simplify the procedure of finding a job and the registration process, and also establish the new version, staying in Poland and working in Poland, the Karta Pobytu. This card was really important for the business person because it offers a staying and working condition for a person who let them to register. And especially was easily to find a job for the person who has a high quality level. We call this high quality level job blue color, white color jobs. And the permission was achievable, or without permission, finding the job, that person who had this high level qualification or belongs to scientist community or were engineers or IT specialists or are working, for example, on healthcare or teaching sectors. The Slovak Republic have at the beginning a relatively strict framework for working on the Slovak labor market, and the labor market was open only a few areas where the labor shortage was well known, but they canceled the restriction from 1st of January and opened the labor market when they realized that they couldn't keep the labor force and the human resources, and they need that kind of labor force. So they tried to follow the line of Poland and cancel the rules and give permission for temporary and long-term work. The single limitation that it's not allowed, similar to Hungary, to support the self-employment and to establish small and medium entrepreneurship. So the person can get a job and can work, but couldn't allow or it's not any support to have ID establishing a small company or working for the as an entrepreneur. The Czech Republic brought up a bit earlier. Although in 2014 introduced the worker card, it's similar to Karta Pobytu in Poland, and offered displaced person later on after the outbreak of the war the opportunity to have a job without any restrictions. So it doesn't matter if it's a long-term or short-term work, and the employers should just register the employees and they can hire such amount of displaced person which they need. Hungary was the last on the list who opened the door for displaced person on the labor market, and we have currently also a really strict and non-flexible regulation. So the person who wanted to have a job on the Hungarian labor market had to have a work permission. Okay, work permission, and so it's not allowed to work freely just in labor shortage areas. So it shows that labor market refugees has a different status in different countries, but what is common, and we can realize during our research, the precarity and insecurity on the labor market is a common phenomenon in the four Visegrad countries, and that's why it's so important, because at the beginning of the period after the war, it was not so important finding a job on the labor market or keeping the job for long term, because the displaced person hoping that they can go home soon, and they try to have such kind of job which offers any kind of salaries, and it was really big difference between the qualification level and the level of job. And as Margaret was mentioned during her presentation, more than 70% of the women, especially women who are coming after the outbreak of the war, had a high quality level tertiary education certification, and the expectation is the displaced person in the Visegrad country mostly was low level jobs, so the job satisfaction is not so high level nowadays, and the precarity and insecurity between the displaced person and the labor market currently is the biggest problem. And although the level of employment is high after 1 year of the outbreak of the war, some international organizations collected data and made different researches and showed that more than 50% of the displaced person got a job, temporary or permanent job in the host country, but this job, the characteristic of this job, it's not so high level and not so prestigious job, and that's why the job satisfaction is not so high level, and the person are thinking about that they went to the West countries to get a new job, a new life, which has a higher prestige and fit better to the qualification structure. It's good to know the difference between the displaced person employment ratio who arrived in the first year and who arrived in the second year is really high. So in the first year, the person who were coming in the first year, the employment ratio is over 50%, although they are women with that condition which was mentioned during the first presentation, and the employment ratio between the person who arrived in 2023, it's much lower, it's lower than 50%, and it's interesting what happened between the 2 years, if the level of the solidarity, if the situation has changed during the labor market, or other factors had impact the employment ratio decreased in the last year a bit. We also try to discover this obstacle which can block the results of finding a proper job or a decent job on the labor market, and collecting together all the obstacles, trying to discover some best practices, and just 3 best practices may I mention because of the time hurry, and I wanted to let some time for a discussion. The first, which I think so very important, and it was not mentioned in the previous presentation, because in the previous presentation we also had a lot of information, especially related to the general information points or online advising or other kind of counseling and support. But I think so what is interesting after the first months and after the first years, that it's not easy to have a recognition of professional education certification, and to find a proper job is challenging, because the displaced person don't have any kind of documents, or they couldn't achieve the registrational acceptance of the level of qualification. And I think so the project, the name is Enigmatic Network. There's an international network established the online platform and collect from 55 countries partners and information and put onto the online platform related to the different qualification system within the countries, and give advice and offer for individual and also for organization if they wanted to compare the two qualification from. I think so it's why important, because the labor satisfaction is important by the displaced person, and if we can achieve based on this online platform and based on this international network system of acceptance, we can support a bit more for the person to fill a proper job and to stay in the host countries currently. And the second point, which is also important, related to the precarious situation and insecure situation of displaced person on the labor market. As I mentioned, more persons are working in insecure condition on the labor market or in informal and shadow economy. And it's also important to protect these employers, and a lot of international organizations started to publish different papers, films, and other kind of information materials for that person who are victims of this abuse. And some organizations, for example, the Shelter Association in Hungary or Hungarian Helsinki Committee, but other NGOs in other countries try to organize meetings, supports, counseling, and hotlines for persons who have that kind of experiences. And especially, for example, the Hungarian Helsinki Committee offer a legal protection for that person who targeted this kind of abuse. So I think so it's amazingly important, especially in that situation when we have such high amount in the informal economy and in the shadow economy. And some of the finding of our research, I have to say that the complex services is amazingly important. And in these services, they should bring together the different actors, and they have to communicate, because we realize that the NGOs are working separate from the public services, and the market actors has own ideas how can they work together with the free human resources. And I think so the main important question, communicate and bringing together the actors and offering structured services for the person, because the expectation that the earlier terminated in 2 months, in half years, it's not fulfilled in the last 2 years, and we should organize such kind of communication structured services, and we should implement in the mainstream this kind of services, because the best practices which we realized during our research project ever as a pilot program. And in my opinion, okay, pilot for 1 month, for 1 year, but after that, the person are staying here. And if you want to keep these human resources in Visegrad countries, we have to implement into the mainstream these services. Otherwise, we will lose high amount of these human resources. Thank you for that question.
Thank you very much. A very important subject, yeah, because this is also about longer term integration, and somewhat following on this question, we will have our final presentation by Natalia Kuperna from the Czech Republic, and also from Pilsen, looking at a related subject of learning the local languages, the languages of host countries.
So thank you all for your presentation. It's an honor to be the last one. I swear I will be quick. So I would like to present a chapter which focuses on local languages teaching in Visegrad countries. The first thing that is important to say is why teaching the local languages is so important. Here you can see a few primary reasons, which of course include everyday life. Because every day in the host country, the refugee interacts with the citizens, almost all the host country, also has to be honest, at work, and when they need to find a job or start studying, knowledge of the language is so important, even more in the weaker countries, because the majority of the population doesn't speak English. The second point is connection with the host country and its cultural identity. If a refugee learns the language of the host country, they can better understand the culture of that country and connect with the local community, which can help them feel more comfortable in the host country. And the last one is very important and complements the previous two. Knowledge of the language is an essential factor for the deeper integration of refugees into the host society. And in all the country, from Visegrad, in all Visegrad countries, knowledge of the language is a part of strategy documents that focuses on the integration of migrants. The second important thing to say is who is providing the local language teaching in the weaker countries. As you can see, there is a state sector which is provided by the specific ministries, the Minister of Education, Health and Sport in the Czech Republic, the Minister of Labor and Social Policy in Poland, and the Ministry of Interior in Slovakia. There are no language courses organized at the state level in Hungary. And the problem of the state sector is that is the lack of flexibility of the courses. For the most part, the scope, form, and location of language teaching is clearly defined, which causes difficulties because a lot of refugees are unable to attend courses because of the work, family, or the distance. In terms of non-profit sector, a large number of initiatives have been established in weaker countries, which, unlike the state sector, have been more flexible. Here are some of the main NGOs that have provided language education, mainly people in the Czech Republic, Polish Immigration Forum Foundation in Poland, Tabor Foundation in Hungary, and Marian in Slovakia. Non-profit sector covers much of the refugee integration assistance in all of the 4 countries, but there is a problem with the quality of the courses, because most of the initiatives involve volunteers who weren't qualified enough to teach the language. And now I would like to introduce some examples of good practices of teaching local languages. The first one is Click with the School in Czech Republic. Course is organized in the same way as the primary school, with the students attending the classes 5 days a week, and they're spending approximately 6 hours in school. This course is divided into 2 parts. The first one is teaching the basics, during which students should mainly acquire skills like writing, speaking, and listening. And at the end, the student receives a certificate indicating the level of languages processing. The second one, Conversation Camps, another initiative from the Czech Republic. It's an online open space for all who are interested in language teaching, and the portal offers the conversation materials on these topics such as sport, hobbies, etc. Each course lasts an hour and a half, and the student is provided with materials in the form of worksheets. Third one is language copies. It's the example from the Slovakia. There are some kind of friendly conversation between a native speaker and foreigner, during which foreigner can practice their Slovak language. And the last one, which is very important, is buddy programs. In the last years, buddy programs have become widely used form of language teaching. These initiatives involve citizens of the host country who voluntarily helping by teaching the local language to migrants or refugees. A huge advantage of those programs is flexibility. They can be arranged to suit the individual time and then take place or not. In 3 countries, there was an education initiative of public programs. In Czech, it was Ukrainian druh, which translated like "be my friend," or "Chodź na słodko." It's like come to a word.
Come to share a word, something like that.
We did say Slovak. So finally, I would like to present some conclusions and recommendations. Language teaching in different countries faces 2 main problems. Difficulties, I would say, flexibility and its lack of flexibility, lack of courses offered, and lack of qualified teachers. Flexibility and qualification, as was mentioned before, is the problem of the weakness in the state and non-state sector. And the last one, of the lack of the number of the courses, is a problem that arises mainly due to overload of non-profit organizations. The courses offered were always filled in within a few hours, and there was no capacity for more people. So the central issue remains the need of greater involvement of state institutions and better cooperation, more of cooperation with NGOs, because NGO sector was really under the pressure, and a lot of people didn't find a way to learn the language. So I would say that increased the cooperation between those state and non-state sectors could involve all of the problems. I hope so. So thank you so much for your attention.
Yeah, so as you rightly pointed out, this is a key problem actually for the migrants to integrate, to function, to simply become a part of the host communities. I think that these three presentations together are also a very good illustration of how the challenges of welcoming refugees are intertwined. Luza spoke about deficiencies, lack of affordable, good quality places to live, and about the soaring prices of buying or renting an apartment. As you rightly mentioned, of course, this is also experienced by the locals, yeah, but this is something that touches the refugees, and therefore they have to find a better job, find better employment that will let them function in the place where they ended up living, and not exactly chose to, but they were forced to stay. And then, of course, it's hard to find a job if you face the language barrier, the language problems. On the other hand, as I said in my presentation, this one single parameter was the most optimistic. The increase of the share of Ukrainian refugees who declared that they communicate in local languages changed immensely during the 1.5 years since we started our research. So a lot has been done, a lot has been achieved, but like Natalia concluded in her presentation, there are still many obstacles and still a lot of challenges still to be faced, still to be addressed. And I think this is basically what will be discussed in roundtable discussion, but as this is a difficult subject, so to face it, we'll get some rest before. So thank you very much for this session. Now we're starting the break. This is the lunch break. All right? Yes, so let me invite you to take lunch, and then we meet at 1:15 for the roundtable discussion. Thank you very much.